Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first installment of my road and journey to competing at my first national powerlifting meet in June of 2024. Considering this is my first video on this channel, I think an introduction is very necessary. My name is Koffi, and I'm currently a powerlifter coming off of my second powerlifting meet. But for those of you guys who may be coming from my main channel, you know that I also make documentaries on bodybuilders, powerlifters, and anybody interesting within the fitness community. Hell, not just people, but also interesting topics as well. I actually just released a documentary on current Mr. Olympia Derek Lunsford, so anybody that's interested in that, head on to my main channel and check that video out. Now, why did I create this channel? Well, I started doing YouTube back in 2022, and I wanted to kind of focus on documentary style content because that was the kind of content that I was passionate making. It was the type of content that I felt would gain the most traction on YouTube, and it was a great balance between what I enjoyed and what worked. I've stuck to that format and stuck to that content because every single video challenges me as a content creator in ways that I couldn't imagine. Every project is different and it's really fun, but a drawback to that is it's super tedious and very time consuming, and it's entirely focused on other people. And in an effort to kind of build my personal brand, I felt it just made sense to start a second channel and kind of place the focus on myself and what I'm doing outside of making those videos and outside of documenting other people's journeys. I figured I could create an outlet that could allow me to create different types of content, more original content that I'm filming myself, and content that may have less production value. And that lower production value could allow me to actually put out videos more consistently and have the substance kind of focus on myself. I also want to use this channel as a means of accountability. If I can commit myself to posting my workouts and posting my progress, I feel like there's no better way of keeping myself accountable, because ultimately I'm not going to want to post myself not working hard. If the camera's on me and I know I'm putting it out there, I'm going to have to maximize my efforts. But I figured in an effort to do things differently heading into nationals, this would be just another way that I can reinforce that overall mindset change with this prep. But another thing that I want to incorporate on this channel is also commentary videos. So videos with me on camera talking about different topics that I wouldn't necessarily turn into a full documentary. But without further ado, let's get into today's workout. Today is my SBD day in my 4-day workout split, which is easily the longest workout of the week. So I'm currently on a 4-day split where I'm training lower body, upper body, a deadlift focus day, and then an SBD day. So literally the day before the session, I actually got my new TYR L1 lifters, which aren't the first squat shoes I've ever worn, but they're the first ones in quite a bit of time. Now, the first pair of squat shoes I ever wore were the Nike Romelios 2, which I honestly didn't like. They hurt the soles of my feet and the toe box was very tight, but these had been getting very rave reviews, so I figured why not give them a shot. When it was time to get underneath the bar, they actually felt really amazing. They felt a lot better than they actually looked. As I was squatting, you could probably notice my heels were coming off the ground just a tiny bit, so I had to be a little more mindful of that, but these were feeling really nice. Now, obviously, training for an SBD day, when it comes to warming up, it actually gets a little bit tedious because my leg day warm-up alone is already like 30 minutes because I like to take my time to really get warm. I just know from personal experience that when I rush my warm-ups on a leg day, it's a bad day for me. So given certain time constraints, it's going to be really hard to be able to get in all the warm-ups that I could possibly want. So I just get to the gym as early as I can and just kind of work through it. I treat my warm-ups kind of like a workout, and I do them in sets, I do them in reps, and I kind of go based on how I feel when I start warming up with the bar. So as I'm going through these warm-ups just with the bar, I can easily identify what areas need more work. Is it my knees? Is it my hips? Is it my hamstrings? As I keep doing those reps, what do I need to go back and target some more? Now at this point, I felt pretty good. My knees just needed to warm up a little more, which has kind of been a running theme for me over the last couple of years dealing with patellar tendonitis, but all I can do is just get them as warm as they're gonna get. And at this point, I'm putting on my knee sleeves using the sock method, which is crazy that I discovered that this year. I mean, it's always been a thing, but I was putting knee sleeves on in hard mode until I discovered this. Now, those knee sleeves are an extra small insert. Why I would get a pair of extra small knee sleeves, I don't know. It seemed like a really great idea when I ordered them. I have a pair of small inserts, actually 2 pairs of small inserts, the black and the white ones, and those fit great, but it's a little bit loose around the knee area. So I figured, hey, if I can actually fit into an extra small actually be able to break them in over time, I'm going to be money. That's going to be amazing. My squats are going to go up. I'm going to get maximum compression. Inzer has always been a tried and true brand, but as you can see, it is really a struggle getting those over my calf. And I'm somebody who's never had big calves. And so as I've gotten bigger and put on more muscle mass, I just forget that my calves are also slowly, incrementally getting bigger every year. So I guess for me, it's still kind of like body dysmorphia with the calves. It was really difficult to get those on. You can actually see that left sock is still on because I wanted to be able to actually get the knee sleeves on and still be able to pull the sock from underneath and just take it off completely because I didn't want to squat with them on. And they just weren't coming down at all. So I just said, F it, let me get into the set, then I'll do it afterwards and actually try to get them on. And as you can see, I'm struggling and I'm shaking that leg a little bit because the circulation is starting to go. Now, that should have been my warning sign to take those off, but I thought, hey, I've come this far. I'm definitely going to get the socks off. These knee sleeves are not going to break themselves in. Mama didn't raise no hoe. This sock is coming off. And they did. So I was able to finally get underneath the bar, test out the sleeves for the first time with the squat shoes, just kind of see how I liked it. And it did feel really, really good. That compression was definitely there. I was feeling that compression a lot, but not really thinking about it. Focus more on getting my knees warm, slow eccentric, feeling the weight, making sure that I'm comfortably able to handle more load as we keep going up into those working sets. Shout out to my coach in the back, form checking meticulously, making sure that my depth is there. Because as you know, in powerlifting, depth is the most subjective aspect of the squat. Good depth to judge A may not be good depth to judge B, and the only way to really combat that is make sure that your depth is completely undeniable, and that's sinking as low as possible. I personally haven't been able to really hit my stride with that just enough depth. And what I mean by that is hitting that sweet spot of not ass to grass, but also clearly below parallel. And that's something that I've definitely been trying to work on. The issues with my patellar has definitely held me back in that regard, but as it gets better, my body gets a lot more comfortable at hitting that sweet spot. Now, obviously, hitting that perfect depth is way easier when the weight is lighter. The end goal is to get to a point where you can actually almost replicate that perfect depth, because it's never going to be perfect at a 1 rep max, but if you can almost replicate that perfect depth at a sub-maximal load, that's better than shitty depth at maximal load. This set actually felt just as good as the last set. My only issue, as you'll see, is the heels coming off the ground a little bit. That is something I definitely need to work on. Maybe drive my hips a little further back. Maybe have the bar sit a little lower on my lower back as well to kind of disperse that load more to the posterior so I can really get to push off that heel a lot more, because just going off the toes kind of defeats the purpose of having squat shoes in the first place. So before we start increasing a little more, getting into those working sets, I'm taking a little bit of a longer rest period as we keep increasing the weight, just to kind of work on that powerlifter endurance. I come from a training background that was very hypertrophy based and very bodybuilder-esque based. And, you know, it was very high reps, minimal rest in between sets. So having to transition from that to forcing myself to actually take proper rest in between sets has definitely been something that's been challenging, because once I start to rest a little too much, that little devil on my right shoulder keeps telling me, hey, you're getting cold, you're getting cold. So I have to remind myself that a huge part of being able to maximize my lifts is taking proper rest in between sets. Now, back to those knee sleeves. We haven't forgotten about those. The knee sleeves that you're currently seeing right now are small, because those extra smalls were literally cutting circulation off to my left leg, which is kind of weird because I'm right side dominant and I always just assume that my right leg is bigger, but we were having serious issues getting that left knee sleeve off of my left calf. So my coach literally had to pry them off my legs one by one, and I went back to my car to get my other pair because I just couldn't finish the workout with those sleeves. And I will never forgive myself for not recording that moment. Now back to my final set, which was a set of 5. It was actually pretty solid. We capped the day off at 297, just because I was coming off of meet, coming off of a bit of a knee tweak, and we didn't want to go too crazy. So we just gave my body whatever it could handle that day, and that was it. Depth, I'm pretty satisfied with. It obviously wasn't ass to grass, but that depth was what I would call maybe a bit above the sweet spot. So I could have gone a little deeper, but all in all, I would say a solid squat session. Now I had to go back to the chucks because I had ordered a pair of TYR barefoot lifters for bench and deadlift, but they hadn't came in that day. So the chucks we're gonna have to do for then. Now it was time to bench. Bench is what I would call my favorite movement of the three. I've always been a much stronger pusher than I have been a puller. That's something that I kind of discovered very early on in my fitness journey. So when it came to powerlifting, I knew that with my squat being average, my deadlift being average, I really had to focus on maximizing my bench, maximizing what I was strongest at. And for my body weight, it's always been solid. So right now I'm actually trying to chase that 405 bench. But before I get there, I'd definitely love to break the record for my state, which is 380 in the open. So I'm definitely super close to it. My current max with a pause is 370, so I'm just 10 pounds away. I'm not necessarily trying to hit it in a specific time frame. If I can do it at nationals, that would be amazing. I definitely don't think that's out of the question, but I kind of have to remind myself that I can't rush the progress. I just have to stay consistent, keep working the program, keep working my form, and just let the weight progress as it's going to progress. So in between my sets, I'm just going to keep working banded rotations, internal, external rotations. I just kind of like to actively continue to get warmer because I feel like a warm-up shouldn't necessarily end before your working set starts. There's no reason why you can't continuously warm up as you're going through your working sets. So, I'll do some bands, plates, cables, mini bands, and once I feel pretty good, I'll kind of stop. Ideally, I won't feel the need to keep warming up by the time I'm at my top set, and if I do, then it's a rough chest day. So as you can see, I kind of ran through that set relatively easily. I think that was my last warm-up set before I actually got into the working ones. That weight right there, I think, is about 221 or 231, I believe. With those collars, it's 231. I've always had kind of trouble calculating the kilos. It's definitely something I'm getting used to still, but it's getting there. Now, another thing I kind of have to work on with bench is the best setup for me, because during my first prep, I was benching with my feet flat, and I was still able to get a decent arch, but it wasn't the best arch I could get. But I was getting maximum leg drive with my feet flat. This last prep, I kind of switched things up and started benching off my toes because I was getting even better arch, but I was sacrificing leg drive. So I think going back to flat-footed bench is actually in my best interest long-term. I was starting to stagnate just a little bit near the end of my prep, not really getting to the numbers I actually thought I could get at my maximum potential, and I think a part of that was switching to the toes. And also, as a means of holding myself accountable, I have to admit that I kind of stopped going to yoga. I had made yoga a routine at least once a week for an hour, and with a busy schedule, falling out of that routine, it was just kind of over for me with yoga. Yoga was cooked, and once I stopped going, I just stopped going, and my body definitely felt it. When I go back and look at my bench when I was doing yoga consistently, flat-footed, that arch was a lot better than it is now. So the game plan right now is to get that back mobility where it was last year, and I think that's really going to help me maximize my bench. So that last set that I just did was 275.6. It moved fairly comfortably, and I'm definitely trying to stay as mindful as possible and keeping that eccentric relatively slow. I also busted out the massage gun to really get into my delts as well, because again, on an SBD day, it's kind of tough to remember to warm everything up adequately. So I definitely realized mid-movement that I definitely neglected to warm up my upper body. I also busted out my belt to give me a little extra compression in the lower trunk, which has always helped me with bench. So for this final set, I'm hitting 303.1 for a set of 5, and ideally I try to go for that set of 5, but my session with my coach was over and I didn't have anybody to spot me. So I've kind of gotten better at, when I'm training by myself, knowing how far I can push it, knowing what my edge is, and when I know that I'm kind of running out of gas, so I can kind of stop before something catastrophic happens. Because I've had barbells laying on my chest in the middle of LA Fitness, and it's not a fun experience at all. Now, as we move on to the deadlift, you see me bust out the heavy duty foam roller just to get into my hamstrings and glutes a little more, because with an hour, I didn't allow myself to be able to get everything I wanted to get in terms of a warm up, and foam rolling was definitely one of those things I neglected. I also definitely took a big chunk of this workout just getting those extra small knee sleeves on just to take them off. So taking that little bit of time to actually get in those muscle groups was definitely essential. And again, it also allows me to practice that powerlifter endurance, to be able to take long periods with my heart rate low and still being able to maximize my lifts. So that's definitely an area that I can improve on, and something that's 100% going to be beneficial on meet day, because ultimately you don't know how long it's going to be. I've been to meets that have lasted 3 hours, and I've been to meets that have been significantly longer. So if I can mimic as much as possible what that day is going to be like on this SBD day, I might as well do that. Obviously, I have stuff to do during the day, so I can't be at the gym all day. So I kind of have to strike a balance between extending the workout for as long as possible, but also getting out in a timely manner. For this current training block, I'm alternating between sumo deadlifts and conventional deadlifts. Now, as the competition gets closer and I start to ramp up a little bit, I'm going to switch exclusively to sumo. Because in terms of what stance I can pull the most weight with, it's 100% sumo. But I've also never really pushed the bounds of my conventional in terms of how much weight I can pull there. So I really don't know if I could pull more weight conventional than sumo. But with a time frame between now and nationals, it's just a little too close to start to deviate from what I know. So for now, it's just alternating on and off. The idea is that being able to strengthen my conventional in a relatively short period of time will definitely help me make bigger gains on my sumo deadlift, because a sumo is a much more leg-driven movement, whereas conventional is a much more back-driven movement, and I've always had a strong back. So if I can get that back a little bit stronger and I can really lock in my technique with sumo, I should be able to see a noticeable improvement in my deadlift. Now, I'm also really interested to see how far I can push my conventional. When I started powerlifting, I never really gave it a chance to develop. I didn't have the time for it to develop. I had already picked out a meet, and whatever I can pull the most was what I was going to stick with. But when I do get the time, I want to see where that conventional could go, because it's not out of the realm of possibility that I could pull more conventional. I don't know. It's just something to think about. Now, unfortunately, I was doing these in chucks, which are not ideal. I don't like these chucks are super hurt. I've had these for a couple years. I can't remember the last time I cleaned them. Those chucks have been through a lot. The last time I deadlifted into these was quite a while ago. I switched over to Notorious Lifts and I forgot to pack them. I thought my TYR barefoot lifters were going to come in. They didn't. So I was stuck with chucks that day, but I had to make the most of it. So at this point, I've been working through my deadlifts at a pretty good pace. My rep range is 3 to 5, just like I did for the squat and the bench. And now it's chalk time. Now, the reason why you see me fan my hands like that is because I'm using liquid chalk. And this year is the first year I actually got on it. And I've actually been using liquid chalk as like a base and then the dry chalk on top of that. Now, that has given me an absolutely OP grip on deadlifts. That combined with the hook grip, chef's kiss. Now, the one thing that I definitely need to work on, as you're going to see in this next set, is staying upright when I initiate the deadlift. Right, pay attention to my back and my overall posture when I start here. I am way too hunched over, and I feel like I'm relying way too much on my lower back to get me up instead of driving through my legs. Something that is kind of hard to see in the moment. I bet if my coach was there, he'd probably call that out, but it had been so long since I had done conventional. I'm kind of like trying to get the muscle memory to do it correctly. But it's all a work in progress. So as long as I keep working at it, keep tweaking it, fine tuning it, the strength is going to come. Now, this last set is my last working set. I believe this was 385, and I think I pushed it for a set of 5. But again, you see that rounding happening in the back, which is definitely going to become a lot more prominent as the weight gets heavier. So with these conventional deadlifts, focusing on the mechanics and the form and initiating that deadlift in the right way is exactly what I'm going to want to do to be able to maximize it. Fatigue definitely also plays a factor. You know, my endurance hasn't always been the greatest. That's also something that I'm working really hard to get better at by not just improving my short-term cardio, but also improving my long-term cardio. Now on to my second to last movement. These are hack deadlifts from a frame, and I've always loved and hated this movement because there's no way to really cheat this or take any shortcuts, which you shouldn't really be doing anyways. But as the fatigue starts to kick in, this is definitely not an easy movement to just run through. Now, this isn't a movement that you're just going to muscle up. Every set is going to require attention to form. That first rep in particular, just getting it off the ground, is kind of half the battle in my opinion. But having a movement like this, which is such a big compound movement at the end of my workout instead of the beginning, is 100% a test of endurance. And believe me, there's no part of me that actually wants to do this. I don't enjoy doing these at the end of a workout, but I understand its purpose. I understand it's necessary, and I understand that this is where strength is built. This is where endurance is built. This is how I'm going to actually be able to sustain my strength over a long period of time on a particular day. If I can actually be able to maximize these reps already pre-exhausted from heavy squats, heavy bench, heavy deadlift, and do the best I can here, that's going to go a long way towards improving my muscular strength endurance, which to me is the name of the game. I think that's really how you test your strength. That's really what determines how strong you are. Can you be pre-exhausted and still move weight? So doing the best I can here, not taking any shortcuts, regardless of how much plates I have on there, exactly what I need to do to improve. Now at this point of the workout, I've been at the gym for 3 hours total, and I definitely want to go home, but at the end of the day, like, the top competitors in the country aren't thinking like that. You know, the top competitors in the country aren't just going home because they've been in the gym for 3 hours. They're maximizing everything. They're finishing strong, as my coach says all the time. So that's what I really need to remind myself when I do get in that mindset of, hey, I'm fatigued, hey, I'm tired. You know, half the battle is a mental one, not just a physical one. If the mental isn't there, the physical's not going to be there either. It's a symbiotic relationship, and that's why I didn't do as well as I wanted to at my last powerlifting meet. I had a setback on the first lift. Mentally, I was and so physically, you know, there was no hope for me for the rest of that meet. But at the end of the day, you know, huge learning experience. There were so many takeaways from it, and that's definitely something I'm going to cover in a different video. But it's definitely fueling me for this next push for when I step on the platform again. Now, you're probably wondering what the hell I'm doing back on a bench. Well, it's because SBD day isn't just SBD day. I actually had 2 extra movements that I had to do. So those hack deadlifts, and now I'm doing Larson presses. I had to Google these before because I couldn't remember what they even were. But just, you know, bench press with your feet elevated. And the last time I did these was probably back in my LA Fitness days with my uncle. And they definitely exposed my weak core. I did move a lot more weight than I thought I would. Again, trying to maximize these days as much as possible. But definitely one of those movements that's kind of fun, you know. Exclusively training squat, bench, and deadlift can get repetitive over a long period of time. So having movements like these kind of sprinkled in, I think isn't just purposeful from an exercise science perspective and a programming perspective, but also pretty fun as an athlete. Now, I definitely have a ton of accessory movements on different days, but this is the first time on an SBD day where I'm doing a different variation on top of squatting, benching, and deadlifting. And similar to my last movement, I want to maximize this one as well because, again, I really want to build that long-term endurance, that strength endurance that'll sustain me over a few hours. And even if I have to bullshit a little bit in between sets to get some extra rest, you know, that's not going to hurt. Now, for my final set of these, I believe that's 220 on the bar that I'm finishing with. I didn't really know how much left I had in the tank. It was definitely a number that I thought I could hit comfortably, but it ended up moving a lot better than I thought it would. So definitely have to keep that in mind for next week. Now, on to my final movement of the workout, lat pull downs. To be honest with you, I did not feel like going downstairs to go to the lat pull down machine, so I made myself a little makeshift station. That box I'm sitting on was the perfect height for me to be able to actually get full extension and still be comfortable. I eventually had to elevate my foot onto that pole just to be able to get better leverage. Now, this stack is way lighter than the stacks they have downstairs, so in retrospect, you know, I probably should have just gone downstairs, but to compensate for that, I just made sure that I was getting the best squeeze possible. And that's about it for this workout. I didn't really have a game plan coming into this video or any kind of specific structure that I wanted to follow. I just kind of wanted to dive into it and just see how it evolves over time. If you guys have any feedback or comments or literally any advice on what can make these videos more entertaining or better, please let me know. I'm really committed to making this series as solid as possible. And with that, my name is Koffi. I will catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching.